And one day we was all over there, and he had found 2 pregnancy tests in the bathroom. So he left all alone. So she, like 2 weeks later, she called me. I don't know if she texted me or whatever. I was outside in my yard, and she was like, "Hey, you want to come over?" I was like, "Yeah." And I'm gonna be honest with you. She said, "Well, we got a little weed." I said, "Look, I'm drinking a beer. I just finished cutting the grass. I'm drinking some beer." And we went over there, and she was talking. We was talking. One thing led to another about sex. And she had asked me, "What was the youngest girl I've been with?" And I said, "You're too young." And she told me, she said, "Well, I've been with older men than you." And I was like, "All right, well, the only way we're going to have sex if you don't tell my partner." And she was like, "Yeah, okay."
Well, we are about to watch a parole revocation hearing for a man who's on parole for taking 2 lives in a vehicular homicide. He's out on parole, and now, as you can see, back in trouble again. I'll unpack it with the details at the end.
Your name and your DOC number.
My name is Jimmy Wayne Visinet, DOC number 626802.
Okay, Mr. Visinet, you're before this panel today for a revocation hearing. Do you have in front of you a signed document that's your signature showing that that you signed for your hearing? Do you have anything in front of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You indicated that you do not have mental illness treatment and you can read and write, so you are not eligible for appointed counsel at this time. Do you have retained counsel?
Well, I didn't have a lawyer, and he never asked me if I wanted a lawyer. He just asked me if I had a lawyer, and I told him no because I couldn't afford it. I've been locked up for a year.
Hey, you're not eligible for an appointed counsel.
Okay.
So at this point, sir, I'm going to read some information, and I need you to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty or guilty with a statement. Okay. So currently you are being held for rule violation number 4, and that you failed to refrain from criminal activity. You were arrested by Lafourche Parish Sheriff's Office 7623 and charged with 2nd-degree rape, which is a felony. It has later been amended to sexual battery, which is a misdemeanor, and you pled guilty in court to that on 5/10 of 2024. How do you plead?
Okay, I can plead guilty to that, but I got a statement behind that.
Okay, guilty
we'll let
with
you
a
make it in a
statement.
minute.
Okay. All righty, and that's the only allegation we have against you. So at this time, we'll go ahead and allow you to make a statement.
Okay, did I send that? Did y'all get that letter that I sent to y'all?
Yeah, and we've all read it.
Okay, well, I mean, that's the statement because when I got locked up over here, Brandon Landry told me the only way that I would be able to get out of here was if it gets thrown out of court or I take a misdemeanor. Now, I took the misdemeanor. I would have never took the misdemeanor if I'd have known that that would have violated my parole. Because I was already in here 9 months going to trial, and they didn't set the trial back twice because there was no evidence on me that on that charge. So they dropped it down to a misdemeanor because they didn't have nothing. And back in my mind, I was thinking that, well, he said to take a misdemeanor, I'd be all right. So I took the parole officer's advice and trusted that, he would. I mean, who am I to trust? If I can't trust a parole officer, I can't trust nobody.
Well, that's probably true. Nobody's a good choice in that case. Mr. Tillis is the person who has your case. So I'm going to ask Mr. Tillis if you have any questions.
So, how long have you been in? You say about a year?
A year and 1 month.
And after your parole officer recommended that you do this, you took his advice, you didn't try to seek counseling later?
Well, that was right when I came in. 2 weeks after I came in, Mr. Brandon Landry came and talked to me and asked me if I wanted to violate myself. And I told him no, because I didn't do nothing wrong. It was a he say, she said. Because there was never no rape kit does nothing like that. It was bogus.
What happened between you and the young lady?
Well, it started out as I met her when I was working for my boss. He was a contractor, and we went. It was 2023. They had a cold freeze, and we went into the house and we fixed the pipes and all for her. My friend started dating her, and he left her because she wanted somebody to support her because she was losing her job. She didn't have a ride back and forth to work. Her boyfriend had just left her. And one day we was all over there, and he had found 2 pregnancy tests in the bathroom. So he left her alone. So she, like 2 weeks later, she called me. I don't know if she texted me or whatever. I was outside in my yard, and she was like, "Hey, you want to come over?" I was like, "Yeah." And I'm gonna be honest with you. She said, "Well, we got a little weed." I said, "Look, I'm drinking a beer. I just finished cutting the grass. So I'm drinking some beer." And we went over there, and she was talking. We was talking. One thing led to another about sex. And she had asked me, "What was the youngest girl I've been with?" And I said, "You're too young." And she told me, she said, "Well, I've been with older men than you." And I was like, "All right, well, the only way we're gonna have sex if you don't tell my partner." And she was like, "Yeah, okay." Well, we had sex. I went home. The next morning, the detective, by my ex-wife's house, the detective came and told me, he said, "Look, I need you to come to Lafourche Parish Sheriff's Office. I need to talk to you." And I was like, "Okay." So I went down there. I told them everything what happened. They let me go. I went back home. 2 weeks later, they picked me up on a warrant.
How old was she?
21,
And how old were you at the time?
46.
I have no more questions.
I have a few questions. Okay, were you drinking when y'all had sex?
After the fact, yeah. But
So you owned for negligent homicide and you were drinking.
yes, I was.
I was trying to get your parole officer on the phone so we could hear what he had to say, but I wasn't able to. But the bottom line is, if you didn't do it, you shouldn't have pled to it. Any plea revokes your probation. It don't matter if it's misdemeanor or felony, it's the facts that we looked at. And you pled. I mean, so
Yeah.
you have offense.
I pled under his consent because if
You
he
gotta take that
I
up
would never done it.
on agreement. You do whatever you gotta do with him. Whatever you gotta do. But with us, we gotta do our job. So that's all I got.
Mr. Biznut, the whole situation with the officer is something you have to do due diligence. You're on parole. You were smoking weed and drinking. Yes, that could have been a technical violation, but you pled guilty to this offense. So we're going to vote at this time. Mr. Tillis,
Revoke.
Mr. Freeman.
My vote is to revoke due to him pleading guilty to condition number 4, sexual battery misdemeanor.
Based on our interview today, our finding is that you are guilty, and my vote is also to revoke. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, what did we just watch? He was initially sentenced to 18 years for the crash that killed 2 women, in which he was over the limit on alcohol. It was a DUI, his 3rd DUI in 10 years, as a matter of fact. So he takes 2 lives. They say what happened is that he was sentenced to 18 years in prison for killing 2 of his 5 passengers in a 2013 car crash that occurred along the Bourg-La-Rose Highway in Lafourche District Attorney's Office said. Okay. Jimmy pled guilty Monday to 2 counts of vehicular homicide, and the district judge, and look at here, his nose isn't broken yet, so I wonder when that happened. Homicide and district judge Hugh LaRosa courtroom, as vehicular homicide is considered a crime of violence under state law. Bisanat is required to serve at least 15 years or 85% of his sentence before he can apply for parole. Now, they didn't, he must have had his parole hearing before Louisiana was making it public, so we don't have it. Otherwise, we would play it for you, because what we like to do here is connect the dots. So if we have a parole hearing, we'll then show the revocation hearing. Didn't happen in that case. We don't have his parole hearing, but it says that the Yuma residents Patricia Vega, 42, and Carrie Scofield, 27, died the afternoon of September 28, 2013. Now, he was in a Grand Marquis. Remember those old Grand Marquis that it was a bench in the front seat? I drove one of those for some time, and it's a boat. And that's why, of course, the 2 women on the right side were killed. He, of course, wasn't, and there were 3 in the back that weren't. He was driving southbound when the car crossed the center lane and veered toward the right side of the road, eventually hitting a tree on its right side, state police said. State police later added that right front passenger Vega had jerked the wheel to the right to avoid a nearby 18-wheeler once the car crossed the center line. Vega and right rear passenger Scofield died upon impact, while 3 other passengers sustained minor injuries. So it was the person on the right and the back right, not the middle seat. So he's veering off, about to hit an 18-wheeler. They grab the wheel and turn it. It slams into the tree. Bisanat, who is not injured, of course he wasn't, had displayed slurred speech, and they never are, and performed poorly on a sobriety test after the crash. Police said that his subsequently breathalyzer test showed his blood alcohol content to be at 0.102, exceeding the legal limit of 0.8 for adults. They added, "This is a tragic circumstance," said the ADA, who prosecuted the case. "Hopefully, when Mr. Bisanat eventually gets out, he will think twice about ever driving and drinking while impaired." I guess he forgot to think twice about maybe driving and having intercourse with a woman and then claiming, I told her not to tell anyone. What was that story? Bisanat had already pled guilty to charges last July, but ended up withdrawing his plea when he learned that vehicular homicide was to be classified as a crime of violence. According to the statute, vehicular homicide committed between March 19, 2013 and May 27, 2014 are considered crimes of violence. The law was later modified to specify that those occurring on or after May 28, 2014 can be considered as such if the driver's blood alcohol content is above 0.20. And this is like laws, legislation. These are where it's people come up, all the PhDs, right? The legislators make these laws that then make us wonder, like, what? Oh, so if it's 0.19 now, it's not a crime of violence? How does that even make sense? Under the original agreement, Bisanat would have only been required to serve a third of the maximum 20-year sentence, but the DA said that this equates to about 6 years. With the new sentence, we are satisfied the defendant will end up serving a much longer sentence than originally considered, the mandatory minimum term of incarceration of crime of violence, noting that the victims' families were in agreement. This was his third DWI in the last 10 years. And I don't know when he got out. I do know, and thank you, Richard, for providing all this information, that he was revoked July 6th, 2023. And he waited basically a full year for this revocation hearing, which is quite interesting. And maybe he knew that he was screwed. Now, he said, well, my PO said just if I could plead to a misdemeanor, they wouldn't violate me. And that's not true. We hear it all the time. And not just, and I believe that people are getting wrong advice. We hear it so often that I do believe that they're getting the wrong advice. We've seen attorneys give wrong advice to their clients. You cannot be involved in criminal activity. That is part of the parole contract that is signed. Being involved in any criminal activity, whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony, it doesn't make a difference as far as the parole contract is considered. So pleading to a misdemeanor can get you revoked. And he was initially charged with with second degree, sexual assault, which is a very serious felony, and they dropped it to the misdemeanor. Now, there are a few reasons why they may have dropped it to a misdemeanor. It could be that they know the system. They know that, hey, look, we don't need to worry about going to court. We don't need to worry about going to trial or any of that. Let's just drop it to misdemeanor and he'll get revoked. He's backing all these years. That's fine. And that could be what the ADA did in that case. I don't believe his story about, oh, I told her not to say anything. She said, I've been with much older people. Oh, yeah. And then, yeah, all of a sudden, I just don't buy it. And he admitted to drinking, which he's not allowed to do for his parole contract. So an easy revoke. I don't know how much time he's backing or how much more time he'll have to serve. He will have another opportunity of going up for parole. And thank you, Richard, for sharing the information. Man. With that, I'll let you go.